Steve Jobs was fired from his own company at age 30. The same company he had co-founded and turned into a billion-dollar success. The board didn't just let him go, they forced him out because his perfectionism made working with him unbearable. He returned years later and saved Apple from bankruptcy, but the pattern never changed. The drive for perfection created extraordinary products and destroyed relationships, alienated partners, and eventually took a toll on his health. The fact that people remember him as a genius and a tyrant at the same time reveals something important about the price of being perfect. You've probably felt a version of this in your own life. That quiet, nagging voice that tells you if it isn't flawless, it doesn't count. You stay up 3 hours late fixing a font that nobody else will notice, or you procrastinate on starting a project because the vision in your head is so beautiful you're afraid your hands will ruin it. We've been taught to view perfectionism as a strength, the kind of answer you give in a job interview to sound impressive. But when you look at the life of someone like Jobs, you start to see that perfectionism isn't actually about high standards. It's about a desperate, narrow need for control. And that need for control shows up in 5 specific patterns. Let me walk you through each one. Number 1, it turns your collaborators into obstacles. At Apple and later at NXT and Pixar, Jobs was known for his reality distortion field. He would convince people they could do the impossible, which was inspiring until it wasn't. If an engineer told him a certain design wasn't physically possible, Jobs didn't see a technical limit. He saw a personal failure. He would scream, belittle, and discard people who were objectively brilliant just because they couldn't mirror the perfect image he had in his mind. When you demand perfection from others, you aren't actually looking for a partner. You're looking for an extension of your own will. And when people realize they're just tools to you, they eventually stop caring about the work and start caring about surviving you. Number 2, perfectionism makes you choose the vision over the person. One of the most difficult parts of the Jobs story is his relationship with his daughter, Lisa. For years, he denied he was her father, even after a DNA test proved it. He was building the image of the world-changing visionary, and a complicated personal life didn't fit into that clean, minimalist aesthetic. He eventually reconciled with her, but the years of damage were already done. This is what happens when you prioritize the idea of a perfect life over the actual people in it. You end up with a beautiful, polished exterior and a lot of empty rooms inside. You might find yourself doing this in smaller ways, ignoring a friend's needs because you're too busy perfecting a presentation, or being short with your partner because they disturbed your flow. The work becomes a god that demands human sacrifices. Number 3, there is a massive difference between healthy striving and maladaptive perfectionism. Psychologists have spent decades looking at this distinction, and the name they give the darker side fits perfectly. Healthy striving is about the joy of mastery. It's the athlete who loves the training or the artist who loves the process. But maladaptive perfectionism is fueled by fear. It is the belief that if you perform perfectly and live perfectly, you can avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. For someone like Jobs, a product that wasn't perfect wasn't just a bad product, it was a reflection of a flawed self. If you feel like your self-worth is tied to your latest win, you aren't striving for excellence. You're running away from a feeling of being not enough. Number 4, the need for control can become a literal death trap. When Jobs was diagnosed with a treatable form of pancreatic cancer in 2003, he didn't listen to the doctors right away. He spent 9 months trying to treat it with alternative diets and spiritual practices. Friends and family begged him to have the surgery, but he wanted to control the outcome on his own terms. He treated his body the way he treated a computer design, as something that could be tweaked and optimized through sheer force of will. By the time he agreed to the surgery, the cancer had spread. It's a haunting example of how the same trait that makes someone a billionaire can also make them blind to their own vulnerability. When you think you can outthink or outperfect reality, reality usually wins. Number 5, this pattern isn't unique to tech CEOs. You see it in elite athletes like Michael Jordan, who was famously difficult to play with because he couldn't tolerate anything less than his own level of intensity. You see it in artists who destroy their best work because of a tiny blemish only they can see. These people are often rewarded by society with fame and fortune, which reinforces the behavior. But if you could ask them in their quietest moments, many would tell you that they are exhausted. They are tired of the constant surveillance of their own thoughts and the feeling that they are only one mistake away from total failure. There's a hidden cost to living this way that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. It's the loss of the present moment. If you are always looking for the flaw, you can never actually inhabit the thing you've built. You're already looking past the success to the next potential failure. It creates a life that is high resolution but low warmth. You might have the best career or the cleanest house or the most impressive resume, but you've traded away the messy, unpredictable connections that actually make life worth living. The real shift happens when you realize that good enough isn't a sign of laziness. It's a sign of sanity. Choosing to leave a project at 90% so you can have dinner with someone you love isn't a failure of standards. It's a success of values. Steve Jobs left behind a world full of devices that changed how we live, but he also left behind a wake of broken relationships and a life cut short by the very drive that made him famous. You don't have to be a masterpiece. You just have to be a person. And usually, the people who love you would much rather have the person than the perfection.